the international legal beagles. That term in legal beagles, that's actually one used an awful lot of times in the United States for our attorneys as you go through. Internationally, the rule of law really is based on the encourages foreign investment as they go through. A lot of times it is in the interest of the country to sit down there and protect companies coming into it because they're helping contribute to the economy of that country. So these countries, they often, especially if they have a strong rule of law, it protects the human rights of citizens and increasing global concern as you go through. And that means sometimes it'll protect the rights of the company coming in, but it also really is in the interest of protecting the citizens of that country, sometimes from the foreign company that comes in as you go through. Here's a rule of law map. You'll see the different degrees as you go through as to which countries really they focus in on the law being a protection for both the citizen and the business you go through. Not everything is peachy with a nice dark green color, is it? As you go through, you'll see a lot of people where the overall score is actually a negative as you go through, where the rule of law isn't necessarily all that applies. So then you have a fallback on international law, where there's a whole series of international law that governs the relationship between governments. And sometimes when there's governments are not getting along, they'll go to a third party, but the third party seldom has the ability to impose a verdict on a foreign country. It's more of a recommendation than a prerequisite they must comply. So private international law governs relationship between individuals and companies that cross international boundaries. As soon as you cross into another country, you must respect the laws of that land, even if you don't know about them, even if you don't like them as you go through. So different aspects of international law, a lot of times you have treaties, sometimes you call them different terms. A lot of times convention is also used, a covenant or a promise between two different agencies, compacts or protocols. All four of those will be used by different countries to refer to international law. So you can be sitting here talking about, well, I want to know what the law is. Well, we don't have any laws, so we have a compact that really assures the relationship between a compact. Okay, compact, yes, I remember that class, international law compact. Okay, same thing. Okay, or a protocol. You'll hear the terminology, so know these terminologies. We talk about treaties. Sometimes you have extraterritoriality as you go through. It's an attempt to apply laws to non-residents and foreigners and activities that take place past its borders. So you're doing business in our country, therefore when you do business outside of our country, our law applies. Well, in their mind it does, and if you're the one that's sitting there facing a judge and the judge is about to put you in jail, you might nod your head up and down and say, yes, it applies, it applies. Okay, regardless, because of the fact that you may be the face that they see for your country, and if your company, and if you go through and defy the laws of that country, you may be the one in prison sitting there doing something that somebody back in the United States made a decision to do. It also applies to tax, employment, antitrust, and environment laws. In the United States, as soon as we start raising the corporate taxes, a lot of our own companies, they go overseas and set up these fake companies that you may have 10,000 employees here in the United States, but the world headquarters sits over in Ireland, where we have 14 employees, and that's where it belongs. Excuse me, 10,000 versus 14. No, I think your business is here. Oh no, we're registered over there in Ireland because the tax rate's so much better. I'm not kidding. That actually is what one of our major technology companies located over here in California is doing actually on a regular basis. They got wooed back, but who knows, they could be running around someplace else and reestablish headquarters in another country over tax issues by the time they're all done. So you really set down, you have tax, employment, antitrust, environmental laws. Some countries, they set themselves up to be tax haven for corporate headquarters. Then they have a lot of money filtering through their country as a basis of having really good laws that are in favor of corporations, trying to draw them in and woo these different aspects in so they can have really strong taxes and have lighter taxes on the people in the country as a whole. A lot of times, performance of contracts is a big, big deal. You may sit down there and have a contract with somebody else for $10 million to provide the following services, and the company doesn't do it. And so you go to the local court and they don't do anything in the process. Who knows what the reason is, but then you try to sit down and pursue it on a worldwide court, but there's no power to enforce a decree. Yes, you are right. Well, what can you do about it? We're going to say you're right. And that's about all the power that court has, because it's a recommendation onto the country as you go through. That's why having a good, solid justice system really should be in your priority list in international business as to what countries to go through. It seems like nothing when you first start, like, because you don't expect to have a lawsuit, but as soon as you have a lawsuit where somebody's sitting there reneging on a contract and you try to find redress from it in a court, you may not find any help there whatsoever. The UN International Court of Justice relies on voluntary compliance. Voluntary means if they don't want to do it, they don't have to do it. So the Convention of International Sales of Goods, it's still just a convention and it still is a recommendation. A lot of times arbitration is a resolution process instead of going to court. Even here in the United States, arbitration is a very common thing, or mediation. Getting a mediation certification is relatively easy, but both sides have to agree to it. Arbitration can be a lot easier when you have a third party in the country that sits down there and presides over that both parties agree to abide by the decision. It's quicker as you go through the process. So, since there's no international police or military force to back up international law, does it have any power? I don't hear you. As a matter of fact, I don't even hear the international police or military force or the international law. In other words, the truth of the matter is it's a recommendation, and it depends as to what the world will think as you go through, and are they defying the will of the international courts, and does it matter if they do or not, since there's no power to back it? So by the time it's all done, it's a moot point in the process as you go through. Litigation, a lot of times you go through and have an exercise of your legal rights in the court in the country that you're in, but it can be complicated and expensive. And there's legal fees you may never see coming as you go through. And who knows, the legal fees or a fee to sit down and have something judged in your favor could be out there. That's called a bribe, and it's certainly inappropriate, but you'll see when you look at a shopping list of countries that really rely upon bribery to get things done, it's not a short list as you go through. The discovery facts can find facts used relevant to the litigation. So that being said, a lot of cross-border litigation prompts questions of which law should apply. If you investigate this company over here and they have work over here, this country, this country, this country, how much applies to this country, and we're going to listen to it or just waive off that country in the relevancy as you go through. So a lot of times it's a choice of law or the choice of which forum you want to sit down there and proceed with litigation as you go through. International legal beagles, they have an awful lot of flexibility as to what jurisdiction they choose and what pathway they choose. But a lot of times the whole issue of extraterritoriality really comes in as to how much you need to rely on local people to sit down there and pursue your legal claims for contract compliance as you go through and litigation. It's a very complex system, so be cautious when you go in. Make certain that you're comfortable with the laws of the land and you know what they are. Take care.